Shabbat shalom to everyone.
That's right. I know people like the raisins. Yeah. It's coming, no worries. Maybe half raisins. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Larry. Drive safe.
Maggie.
I'm
kidding.
sorry.
I'm just kidding.
I apologize. Mr. Miller
When I
is
was-
a congregant rabbi.
When my father would schlep me to synagogue every Shabbat morning, and the rabbi, if God forbid, you should move your mouth, even if nothing came out of it, and we're talking 150, 200 people on a Shabbat morning, it was like he would stare at you, and one more movement out of your mouth would, you'd be.
Lightning was gonna come out.
Oh, I mean, they had, what did they have? They had, what they had, not guards, but they had, people who would escort you to your seat, and they'd be monitoring. It was crazy. The good old days. That's why I aspired to be a rabbi, so I could have all that control. And then you guys took all that control away, and now I can't do that. Oh, there were times when he would be giving a sermon, and God forbid, a kid would make a sound, or there would be some noise that you could barely hear. He would stop. It's crazy.
That's awful. That's abuse.
I'll tell you one thing, everybody respected him.
That's not called respect, that's called fear.
Well, for some of us, there's no difference. We'll take either one.
The congregation I grew up in Chicago, when they knew the rabbi was doing the sermon, they'd run like hell.
Yeah, well, they get out of
They'd
it.
get up, especially high holy days, they'd all get up.
Yeah. Oh, I've had that happen. No, when I would give the sermon at Dartmouth in Rollins Chapel, and everybody knew it was coming, there would be out of, I don't know, say 200 or 250 people, there'd be about 15 to 20 that would walk out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was like, how do you do that? I was just in the back of my mind like,
How could you do that to the person standing up there?
of course, as they were doing it, I was writing their names.
They flunked the course.
Not hardly, not hardly.
Good.
We had one of those lists in college,
What's that? Did you have
If you
that?
didn't show up to certain things, you got put on the.
On the list.
I won't say it since I'm standing on the bima, but the list, and they would put the
You got
list
on-
on every corner in the music building. You do not come to this recital.
I wish I had like a scarlet letter for those that walked out, something like that, Okay, all kidding aside, let us begin with the Matovu on page 290.
We'll sing it one or two times, so everyone can join in.
Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Mishkenotecha Yisrael. And let us continue now with, on page 294, thanking God for all the miracles of creation and for life. Page 295, let us join in prayer. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who stretches the earth over the waters. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who strengthens our steps. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who clothes the naked. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who gives strength to the weary. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who made me in the image of God. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has made me free. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has made me a Jew. We continue now with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 312, followed by the Baruch Hu on page 313.
Yisrael, Bagala, Uvisman Kari, Vimeru, Amen. Yeshmei Rabban Yivarach, Li'olam U'olam Yamlayra, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitba'ar, Yitromam, Yitmasei, V'yitadar, V'yitalei, V'yitalal, Shemei D'Kodesham, Leilan min kol yachata, V'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiran bi'alma, V'yimeru, Amen.
Please rise.
Baruch Hu et Adonai, HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai, HaMevorach, Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue now with reading the prayer on page 317. Let us read responsively, page 317 in the middle of the page. O God, inspiration and God for all, you have spoken in 1,000 tongues for us to hear, in every land and every age. Your children have heard you and imagined you in separate ways, and yet, O God, you are one unifier of humanity.
We give thanks for the sages and teachers who bring us understanding of your will. Gratefully we recall the lawgivers and prophets, the psalmists and sages of Israel, and joyfully we remember that from the dawn of Israel's life, we would turn to you and find purpose.
May the teachings of our ancestors live on in our minds, and their passion for righteousness stir our hearts. Help us to live so that our daily conduct reveals the beauty and wisdom of your truth. Together, Baruch atah Adonai, habocher bi'amo Yisrael bi'ahava. Please rise for the Shema, page 318. we continue with the V'ahavta, page 319.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתיכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
And let us join together on page 321 in the English, the prelude to the Mi Chamocha on page 322. Together, page 321. Sing the song of men and women, joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. And the Song of Freedom, page 322, the Mi Chamocha.
Mi chamocha b'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, norat ha'ilot asef aleh, norat ha'ilot asef aleh. Shira chadesha shibhurim le'shimcha asfat hayom yachad kulam ve'imlichu ve'yamru Adonai yimloch le'olam, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed.
Yisrael, Kuma Be'ezrat Yisrael, Ufdeichenu Mecha Yehuda v'Yisrael, Go'alenu Adonai Tzivaot Shemo Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch Atah Adonai, Go'al Yisrael. Rock of Israel, rise in support of Israel and redeem Judah and Israel as you promised. Our Redeemer Adonai Tzivaot is your name. Blessed are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. We continue now with the Tefillah, page 323. Please rise.
Adonai, Sefer Tiftach, Ufi Agite Hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise.
Page 324.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Nara, Elyon, Gomei Chasadim Tovim, V'gonei Hakol, V'zocher Haseyavot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geula livnei b'neihem, Le'man Shemo b'Yahava, Melech Ozer, U'Mashiach U'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, V'Yisrat Serah.
Page 325.
Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, B'chayei hakol atah, Rav le'Hoshia. Mechakel hayim be'chesed, Mechayei hakol be'rachamim rabim, Somer noflim be'rofei cholim, U'matir asurim, U'mechayei emunato, B'shenei afar, B'chamo ha'gevurot, U'midom Eloch, Melech benit u'mechayei, U'matzliach Yeshua, V'nehem ha'natal yachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei hakol.
Page 326, the Kedusha.
Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, ki shem shimakdishim oto mishmei barom, kakatuv haya nevi'echa, v'kara zeh ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Melech haaretz, Kevodo. Adir, adirenu Adonai, Adonenu madishim chabeku haaretz, Baruch avod Adonai, mimkamo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu, hu Malkeinu, hu Moshiach, ve'hu Yashmi'enu, berachamav le'anecho chai,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור
לדור ודור נגיד גד לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושת הנקדיש. ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושת הנקדיש. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גד לך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גד לך, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. And we continue silently, either on the even number pages all the way through to page 335, or in the odd number pages again to page 335. And of course you may be seated. Let us join in prayer, page 333, for the joy of human life. Together. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, modim anachnu lach, we give thanks unto you. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, modim anachnu lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose, modim anachnu lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hatoshimcha u'lacha na'el lehodot. And we continue now on page 337.
Oh, say shalom bimromav, hui ha say shalom aleichem. Shalom Aleinu ve'alko Yisrael, Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'alko Yisrael.
And we continue now with the Torah service. We're going to begin with Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah on page 364 at the top of the page. And then when we complete that, we'll turn to Baruch Shenatan. Please rise as the ark is opened.
Mitzion Teitzei Torah, Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, V'dibar Adonai Mirushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael Bekedushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai.
Be seated, I'm sorry. Shabbat Shalom again to everyone, and just wanted to provide a brief introduction to the Torah portion that we're going to read this morning. If you do have a plot somewhere, we should always make sure that we have a few at least available, and somehow
Definitely in the
we
hallway.
often don't have them here, but if the Torah reading is relatively short, so by the time you'd find the page, we'd be halfway done anyway, but that's okay. You can follow it if you're following along in Plowed on page 1212. And unlike, we're not going to read what I talked about last time. Instead, this portion, Pinchas also has in it all the Jewish holidays in them. So if you really want to know what all the Jewish holidays are, you can either turn to this portion, and there's another description of the same holidays in the same order in Leviticus, in the parsha that's called Emor, but I don't know the exact chapter number. But here, beginning, if those of you that have the plots, if you turn to page 1211, actually 1210, beginning with verse 9, for those of you that looks like everybody has the plow. Yeah, it looks like everybody has it. So on page 1210, on verse 9, that's where the excitement begins. If you like festivals and you like all of that, so you just go through and you see on verse 9 through verse 10 is you just have the Shabbat. These are really the offerings that were brought for each of these festivals. I just want to point out just a few things. Another festival, it's considered a minor festival, but it is a festival, is a Rosh Chodesh, which is the first of the month. Each month there was at the beginning of each month, there was an offering that would be brought to signify the beginning of the month. Special prayers, we now say special prayers, or at least in say traditional Judaism, when you have a service that falls out on, say, Rosh Chodesh, say it falls out on a Wednesday. There are certain prayers that you would read specifically. You would recite Hallel, which is a prayer of thanksgiving, and other prayers also. There's an insert in the tefillah when you recite silently that also has a reference to Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the first month, the first day of each month. If you go to verse 16, that's very straightforward. That's where we get Passover. Okay, that's where Passover is. And if you go to verse 26, that is Yom HaBikurim, the festival of the first fruits. This is on page 1212. That has to do with Shavuot, which occurs in the spring. It's not called that. I mean, we can reference it as Yom HaBikurim, but you see the agrarian nature of the way things are being laid out here. The sacrifices, the offerings that are brought, it's all farm-based, farm to sacrifice, not instead of farm to table, farm to, farm to sacrifice, which was the way that they prayed, which was the way they showed giving thanks to God. Now we do it in words. In the seventh month, it's the day of when the horn is sounded, the first day of the seventh month. That refers to Rosh Hashanah. If you want to stay here till 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll explain why we consider Rosh Hashanah to be the new year. And here in the biblical passage, it's the seventh month, right? Doesn't make sense because we look at Rosh Hashanah, and that's what is here. Yom Teruah is the sounding of the horn. That's one of the blasts. That's one of the three different blasts that are done on Rosh Hashanah. So I know you're all dying to know, well, why is it that it's this way? Now, well, there is a text that's called the Mishnah. The Mishnah is a edited version of the oral law that took place in the year 200. And this oral law, or this oral Torah, is considered in traditional Judaism to be given by God to Moses at Mount Sinai. And there, in this edited version of this oral law, there is a reference that there are actually 4 Rosh Hashanahs in the course of a year, where you count, depending upon the subject matter that you're counting, a Rosh Hashanah. So the Rosh Hashanah for years, for counting years, is the Rosh Hashanah that we know, okay? But that's the 7th month in reference to the Bible. Now, there's also a historical explanation in that the calendar that we adopted when we were in the first exile. The Babylonians were keeping a moon calendar, and we didn't have the authority anymore to do it by sighting the moon and having witnesses come before the Sanhedrin. It was a whole elaborate system before the first exile. When they came, they took it over lock, stock, and barrel, and some of the names that were Babylonian names were actually adopted into the Hebrew calendar. So Judaism has always had a way of assimilating the culture that they went into and adapting it as their own. We think, well, we're the only ones that did that. That happened way, way back in history. So you have Rosh Hashanah here. So I knew you were dying for that explanation, and I gave you, and so I wanted to provide you with that. The 10th day, you shall practice what's called self-denial. Well, that's pretty easy to figure out. That is Yom Kippur. There are 5 different actions of self-denial to afflict the soul. One of them, of course, is fasting. Those 5 afflictions are based on 5 different passages where the affliction is stated. And then in this oral law, those afflictions are described: not eating, not drinking, not taking a shower, things that would give you comfort. There's 5 such things, with some exceptions. On the 15th day, that is Sukkot, and you can see that's on page 1213. Now we're not going to read all of them. We're just going to read we're just going to start on page 1212. The reason for that is a very simple one. This week I began to create a calendar for the coming year. We start our fiscal year in July, so I'm tasked, one of my jobs is to create a skeleton calendar that has all the holidays and all the services and Friday night. So I did that. And naturally, one of the things that gets highlighted is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So for that reason, in celebration that my job is completed, we're going to start on page 1212. That's just a joke. That's not where we're starting. Okay.
What chapter are we?
It is chapter 29. Okay. And for those of you that are new here, what we do is we call groups up to the Torah. We have three aliyot. So so we're going to start. I guess we'll start with Anne and Nate and James to come forward. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And we'll go to here.
Okay. I'm sorry. So how far? 7?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just matter. We do it. Okay. All set.
Baruch et Adonai havorach.
Baruch Adonai Havorach le'olam
Vayed. Baruch Adonai havorach le'olam vayed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. ובחודש השביעי באחד לחודש מקרא קודש יהיה לכם, כל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו, יום תרועה יהיה לכם, ועשיתם עולה לריח ניחוח לאדוני, פר בן בקר אחד עיל אחד כבשים בני שנה, 7 תמימים ומנחתם סולת גלולה ושמן, 3 עשרונים לפר, 2 עשרונים לעיל, ויסרון לכבש האחד ל7 הכבשים, ושעיר עזים אחד חטאת לכפר עליכם, מלבד עולת החודש ומנחתה, ועולת התמיד ומנחתה, ונזקיכם כמשפטם, לריח ניחוח של אדוני.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Shabbat shalom.
Anne, would you like to come? and Kate and Cody, and then we'll with Rick and Heidi and Maggie.
How far are you going?
We're just gonna go to. Where did we stop? We stopped at
Yeah, we're so 7 to, yeah.
Okay, that's where the hall is, right? Okay.
368.
It's also right here in the big
Yeah.
thing. Okay.
Come close.
Yeah, come a little closer. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Uviasor lachodesh hashvi'i hazeh. Mikra kodesh yeh lachem, v'initem et nafshotechem, kol melacha lo tasu, v'hikraftem ola l'Adonai reach nichoach, par ben bakar, echad ayil echad, kivasim b'nei shana, shiva temimim yiyu lachem, uminchatam solet b'lulav hashamen, shlosha esronim lapar, shnei esronim lo ayil ha'echad, Isaron la'keves ha'echad, l'shivat ha'kvasim, us'ir izim echad chatat, milvad chatat ha'kipurim v'olat ha'tamid, u'minchata v'nizkehem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torat emet. V'chaye olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yeah, Rick, Heidi. Yeah, 12. Yeah, 12.
I'll stop on 16.
Oh, Molly, did you want to come? Please.
We're missing our third here.
And our voice.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bahar banu min kol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Uv'chamisha asar yom ha'chodesh hashvi'i mikra kodesh yeh lachem kol melechet avodah lo tasu v'chagotem chag l'Adonai shivat yamim v'higraftem ola yishereach nichoach l'Adonai parim v'nei vakar shlosha asar elim shenayim kivasim b'nei shana arba'a asar temimim yiyu uminchatam solet b'lulav hashamen shlosha esronim lapar echad lishlosha asar parim shnei esronim la'ayil ha'echad lishnei ha'elim v'isaron la'keves ha'echad li'arba'a asar kvasim usir izim echad chatat milvad olat hatamid minchata v'niskar.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam yata b'tochenu, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Because it's not open very far. Shabbat shalom again to everyone. We are going to continue our service with the Mishaberach prayer on page 371. We pray for the healing of Rhoda Bennett, Harold H. Fink, Gloria Weisberg, David Cherniak, Phyllis Feibelman, Dr. John Johnson, Mark and Hetty Blinderman, Elise Zeman, Jennifer and Amy Sunberg, Pam Fisher. There's another sheet. Oh, I'm so sorry. Excuse me.
You want me to check the library?
What's that? Elizabeth Kaiser. Okay. Alice Glass, Elizabeth Kaiser, Sheila Ross, Larry Miller, Nate Ginsberg, Bruce Glover, Howard Silverman, Patricia Silverman, Lisa Hafizi, Aline Moran, Elaine Berman, Erin LeMay, Carol Silverman, and our service continues now. We're going to return the Torah to the Ark, page 374. Please rise.
Hallelujah,
Tehillah Chasidam
Lieben Israel am Gerov. Hallelujah, hallelujah. It's Chaim Hilim V'Chazikim Ba V'Tom Keha Meushar Deracheha Darchei Noam V'Chol Netivoteha Shalom. Ashivenu Adonai Elecha B'nashuva Chodesh, Chodesh Yameinu, Chodesh Yameinu Kekedem.
You may be seated. We have a few minutes. If you take, I can take any questions or any comments either on the parsha or prayer service or any things that you'd like to open for a short discussion.
Isn't Rosh Hashanah also supposedly the beginning of the world?
Yes, yeah, it's also considered to be the day on which the world was created. Exactly. There's a beautiful poem. I don't know if it's online. It was written before the internet by Danny Siegel, who's a very famous. He's noted as the mitzvah man. He dedicated his whole rabbit. Is brilliant guy. I heard him speak while he was in rabbinical school, and just absolutely brilliant. And he decided to devote his life to going around to not only writing, but going around to various congregations and across the United States, I think even the world, and encourage them to do mitzvot. I mean, they have workshops on different types of projects that could be done, like collecting shoes for those that, for poor people, and all kinds of creative, different ways of like performing mitzvot and teaching about the importance of it. And he dedicated his whole life to that. And he's written several books, and one of them, a beautiful poem that I've actually read on the high holy days as part of the liturgy, is exactly that very thing about creation. It's really God looks across the expanse and creates the Grand Canyon, and then creates the beautiful mountains and the lakes and so forth. It's really a very, very creative poem, but you're right. When we, our years are counted from creation. In other words, creation is, we're now in the year 5,783. That count is based on a book, I believe, it's called Seder Olam, The Order of the Universe, where they actually kind of calculate based on the biblical thing. And yeah, they calculated back to, well, Earth must be 5,783 years
So
old.
was creation day one?
Yeah,
3,
right.
4, 5, 6, I mean, that's how we got it.
Yeah, right, exactly,
Okay.
right, yeah.
Just
Yeah.
making sure.
Yeah, now, you can say, well, that it's not true and so forth, but in calculating, there are individuals who have done these calculations with regards to the Christian calendar, and there are some scholars who think that it's off by about 4 years. That they actually started counting when Jesus was 4 or something like that.
I read that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they really have the wrong date, so it's really,
The BC thing messes it
still
up.
2019, because it's off, it's 4 years. They're off 4 years. It's not that. It's kind of an interesting, and also there was somebody who wrote who spent their whole academic career arguing that the world was not created they calculated the world was created on a Tuesday. So the Shabbat is really a Monday. I mean, so that way you can devote your whole academic life
I
to
guess.
those sorts of
Or you can do
endeavors.
something else.
There are academics that have done so. I've known quite a few. These obscure little areas that they get caught up in, and they just spend their whole life in it. Others,
Really?
I mean, the Jewish calendar is really a fascinating thing. Has anybody ever tried to study how they came up with it? I mean, it's a fascinating thing because, I mean, for example, like you say, well, with the Gregorian, it always changes relative to the Gregorian calendar. That's because we're on a lunar calendar, but we're with adjustments that take place. Why? Because in the Bible, it says certain holidays have to fall out in certain times. And they've calculated it on, I've talked about this before, I'm giving you the sum total of my knowledge of the Jewish calendar, and it's a 19-year cycle. And every 19 years, it repeats itself. And so we want to know, well, what year in the cycle we're in. You divide 5,783 by 19, and whatever the remainder is, that's the year of the cycle that you're in.
Up to 19.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you'll never get a remainder more than, more than
You won't get a
19.
3 over something.
No. Whatever the remainder is when you do the long division, that's the cycle that we're in. And that's why, for example, you get a month added. I mean, it's really a very elegant calendar, hard to follow, but it's an elegant calendar that's dedicated to making sure that the holidays fall out at a certain time. For example, Passover has to fall out in the spring. Why? Because the Bible, for no other reason than the Bible says so. It's not complicated, it's just, well, the Bible says it has to fall out. So they calculated to make sure that Passover always fell out in Chodesh Aviv, the spring month. And why Shavuot, which celebrates the giving of the Torah, right? But it's really a celebration of the first fruits that take place in May. And so they linked the first fruits with the giving of the Torah. And so they calculated it somehow that it came out at the same time. It's all kind of interesting, stuff like why we do what we do, And some of like for example, if you look in the Bible and you look at Rosh Hashanah, it only has one day. There's only one day of Rosh Hashanah, but we celebrate 2 days. Not only in Galut, but in Israel, they celebrate 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because one time, and this is recounted in the Talmud, it was the announcement of the new moon was anticipated, and so they began the service. However, they were delayed, and they came at the wrong time, they came later. And so to avoid that from ever happening again, the Sanhedrin, or the rabbis, quote, made what's called the takana, which means you can't change it. You can't change it ever. And they added another day to it so that there would be no transgression, because the witnesses were delayed in and out. The Levites wrongfully anticipated the declaration of the new moon. And so they began the Rosh Hashanah service, but they were too soon. They did it like the day before.
They never want that to ever happen again, so.
Right, so they made,
it
in Israel, they celebrate 2 days, we celebrate 2 days. But in Galut, for those of us who grew up in conservative congregations, for all the festivals, we celebrated 2 days. Why? Because there were Jews living during the Second Temple period, they were living outside of Israel. And so they would have to get the announcement of the new moon to calculate when the holidays were. Like, for example, Passover is on the evening of the 14th, right? So that's when Passover begins, so they would calculate. But then the Samaritans didn't like the Sanhedrin, so they would send up smoke signals at the wrong time to confuse those who lived outside of Israel. And so they made, not a takana, but they made a gezerah, a decree, that they would serve 2 days, so never get the date wrong. And so the Talmud asks, well, why, now that we know how to intercalate it, now that we have a calendar, why don't you just go back to 1 day? Well,
we know what day it is.
Yeah, so the reason why is you're supposed to be careful of the customs of your ancestors. You should be very watchful. And Rashi comments that there may come a time when the government will prevent you from having your own calendar. So for that reason, we observe, now, nowadays in conservative congregations, while they acknowledge that they're 2 days, because they have trouble getting them in, oftentimes they won't have services on the second day of the festival. And we as Reformed Jews here, we celebrate actually the festivals on the Friday that's closest to the holiday. Why? Because it's, people, we have trouble getting people to come during the week. So it's all kinds of different configurations. But that's the origin of all this business. Anything else? I know we're kind of interested to get.
If there's nothing else, I have one question. I know you must know the answer to this.
Oh, I'm sure I do, right?
I don't know where it is in the Torah, but I want to ask you, how did Moses make coffee?
Oh, he brews it.
That must be your name.
Nice setup, you see, we actually planned that.
We didn't plan it, that's the best.
Okay, on that note, I know we're all sort of anxious to.
There's also a beer.
What's that?
There's a beer he brewed.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Here, do they brew, is it
No,
here?
I think it comes out of California something.
Oh.
You can buy it.
Oh, okay, all right, keep that in mind. All right, we're gonna continue with, what's that? Okay, all right. Let's continue with the Aleinu, page 586.
Aleinu litabeat ladon hakol, lateit gedula litzeh breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama, shelo samchachenu chaim, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anatnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, livnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech ha'aretz, bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
This week we observed the yard sites of Cassius Fishbein, Max Keller, Albert Klein, Jean Feinberg Marx, and Terry Barkin. Is there anyone saying Kaddish for someone who they wish to remember? The Mourner's Kaddish, page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Abba, bi'alma divrach hirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam le'olei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata Tani Ran Bialma V'Imru Amen. Ye'esh Lama Rabamin Shemaya V'Chayim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. Osa Shalom B'Mramav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. May God, who establisheth peace unto the heavens, grant peace and comfort in the hearts of all who mourn, and let us say, Amen. You may be seated. First of all, I want to just acknowledge what a wonderful turnout we had this morning once again for our Shabbat morning service. And I want to thank Nate for coming and making the coffee, and to Priscilla for helping to set up and bringing blueberry muffins as per Nate's instruction. And of course to my wife Maggie for making a wonderful casserole as well as a kugel. And for the coffee and for the community. It's a wonderful way, I think, for us to spend Shabbat as a community, and just in terms of conversation and then in worship.
It really felt like family around the table.
Yeah,
This
it
morning
was,
especially,
yeah.
with all of our little ways.
Mhm.
It was just very, very nice. I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, thank you. So for the conclusion of our, let's see, there's on Wednesday there will be Torah study at 5 o'clock. On Monday at 5:30 is the Interfaith Bible Study at the Government Street Presbyterian Church, 5:30 to 7. The concluding song is Molly's Choice. So Molly, I'm going to let you choose. There's so many good ones to choose from.
There are some good ones.
What's your favorite?
I have a lot of favorites. I'm trying to decide what everybody will sing with me. How about 657? We haven't done that one in a while.
Okay.
Maybe Nate will sing with me. I know he likes it.
Okay.
Ochobo?
Oh, sure. Very nice. Okay, very good.
It's upbeat.
It's upbeat, so we have to make it upbeat. We might need some percussion.
Right.
I know. We might have to talk about that.
Cody, the podium is.
I was gonna say, if you feel like making a loud beat, but we'll go. So join with me. We'll do it a couple times so you can catch on.
I paid no attention. What page?
657.
Thank you. This is the slow chair.
Apparently.
657?
657. So. Ojobo shalom aleinu. Ojobo shalom aleinu. Ojobo shalom aleinu. Me'al kulam. Again. Ojobo shalom aleinu. Ojobo shalom aleinu. Ojobo shalom aleinu. Me'al kulam. Salam aleinu me'al kolam. Salam, salam, salam aleinu me'al kolam. Salam, salam. Ojobo shalom aleinu. Ojobo shalom aleinu. Ojobo shalom aleinu me'al kulam. Ojobo shalom aleinu. Ojobo shalom aleinu. Ojobo shalom aleinu me'al kulam.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
I'm glad that's your favorite song.